up on Lawmakers. A bill limiting the number of semester hours for which students can receive the Hope Scholarship passes the House. Also in the House, a bill that would prohibit cities from setting their own minimum wage. And a bill that would make the green tree frog, Georgia's official state amphibian, passes the Senate. Those stories and more are next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers for Tuesday, February 22nd.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gerald Bryant.
And I'm Nwandi Lawson. Also on tonight's program, the debate gets heated in the Senate over the Georgia Residential Mortgage Fraud Act.
And the House Rules Committee votes to hear a controversial abortion measure on the House floor tomorrow. But our top story tonight changes to the Hope Scholarship.
Well, legislation that would limit the number of credit hours Hope Scholars are funded for passed the House today. 127 hours would be the new limit under House Bill 299. David Zelski joins us live with the details. David.
Well, Nwandi, studies released 2 years ago warned that Hope costs would exceed the funds as soon as 2008. House Higher Education Chair Bill Hamrick believes House Bill 299, which he sponsors, is a way to begin fixing the problem.
It's about fairness. It's about equity. It's about making sure that this program is a 4-year program and that it accommodates the students in all schools in the state of Georgia to make sure the Hope program, the free program for our best and brightest, continues.
That's true. It won't affect anybody that's in the program now, but it will affect anyone from now on. Those who wanted to go into these degree programs that are critical to the economic development of our state. You're talking about all of these bachelor degrees in engineering, in nursing, in pharmacy. That's what you're talking about, restricting. You want to get them to that last few semesters and snatch the rug out from under them? Because that is what a yes vote on this bill does.
We have letters from the top educators in our state that control our university system saying they support it. And I know none of us in this room think for a minute that these individuals who rely to a great deal on the Hope Scholarship to send students over there and who have increased our best and brightest going to our state universities are going to support any legislative initiative that in any way would harm the growth we've had.
Now, if this bill passes, the 127-hour limit would begin with the fall 2005 freshman class. House Bill 299 passed by a vote of 93 to 76 and now heads to the Senate. Reporting live, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
Thanks very much, David. And in a related story, Senate Bill 179 passed out of the Senate Education Committee today. SB 179 would remove all capital outlay projects from lottery funding, allowing more money to be used for Hope scholarships and for other funds. Senator Bill Hamrick explains why this bill is important during tough economic times.
What we found when we went through the process of reviewing the Hope program was that people didn't understand that the money had been used in the past for buildings and other things. At the time, there was just enough money to do that. It's not being done now, and this legislation only cleans up the law so that it's not in statute, that we could go back to doing that at some point, because I think people want to have the confidence that we're going to use Hope funds for scholarships and grants.
Legislation regarding capital outlay projects passed the Senate last year but was unsuccessful in the House. SB 179 now moves to Senate rules.
The Senate today passed a bill aimed at cracking down on crooked mortgage lenders. Senator Bill Hamrick says the legislation was requested by the State Attorney General's office.
They've run into several serious situations where those involved in the mortgage lending process are engaging in criminal conduct and purchasing properties and then abandoning those properties, which deteriorates the neighborhoods. And this is a problem in Georgia. Georgia has been highlighted as one of the top states for mortgage fraud. We've had several prosecutions out of the Attorney General's office, and we've had prosecutions out of the U.S. Attorney's office.
Senator Vincent Fort tried to amend the bill to deal with predatory lenders who charge high interest rates and often prey on the elderly and poor. Fort's predatory lending bill was, in his words, gutted by the House 2 years ago. He was against an effort to have his amendment ruled not germane, meaning it would not even come to a vote.
Vote this up or down, vote your consciences. But let me tell you one thing. What I'm not prepared to do is to be treated in a way that is unfit for this body to treat any one of its legislators. When I have lawyers telling me it's absolutely germane, both deal with what? Mortgage fraud. Both deal with swindling folk out of their houses. This could get real complicated if you want to, but you can cut to the chase. The fact of the matter is, if this ain't germane, ain't nothing germane that comes to this floor. Stevie Wonder could see that this is germane.
Senator Fort's amendment was not allowed. Senate Bill 100 passed 51-0 and goes to the House.
A bill that would revise the Georgia minimum wage law by prohibiting local governments from setting minimum wage requirements passed the House today. Lawmakers Chris Knight joins us live with more on House Bill 59. Chris.
In Wandy, House Bill 59 would not give local governments the power to set living wage mandates. Those mandates adjust minimum wage requirements to the cost of living in a particular city. Those opposing the bill say it harms minimum wage workers in Atlanta who are trying to cover the cost of living, while those supporting the bill say it should not be up to local governments to decide what businesses should pay their employees.
It does not allow local political subdivisions to go outside of the federal and the state minimum wage requirements, or it doesn't. Conversely, it doesn't allow them to place on a business a partner benefit or some type of insurance coverage that they would rather not. It's a basic right that businesses have not to be put in that position by their political subdivision.
If a person doesn't make a living wage, it really costs the city. For example, if a person makes $5 or $6 an hour, they can't afford health insurance. So what does that mean? When they get sick, they go to Grady Hospital, and Atlanta and Fulton and DeKalb County, pay for it. They can't afford to pay their rent. So what? You have to provide public or affordable housing for them. So it is in effect a subsidizing of employers who pay less than the living wage for the city or the other political jurisdictions that have to take care of their health care needs, their housing needs, and things of that nature.
House Bill 59 passed by a vote of 105 to 57. It now heads over to the Senate. Reporting live, I'm Chris Knight for Lawmakers.
Chris, before you go, were any amendments offered to that bill?
Well, actually, in Wandy, 3 amendments were offered to the bill, but they all 3 failed to pass.
Thanks very much, Chris.
Well, it is time for our annual lesson in state symbols. The state butterfly, as we all know, is the tiger swallowtail. The state fossil is, of course, the shark tooth. And Pogo of newspaper cartoon fame is our official state possum. We have an official prepared food that, of course, is grits. And the gopher tortoise serves as our state reptile, while the knobbed whelk is our official seashell. But now, thanks to Senator Preston Smith, we are a step closer to having an official state amphibian, the green tree frog. And just how many frog jokes and puns can one senator make?
While I'm a little under the weather today and feel a little bit like I have a frog in my throat, I do think this is an important issue. I'm going to do my best to deliver a riveting speech for you. We do not have a state amphibian. And this jumped out at them as a possibility to make an improvement to our code. And while they saw the bill sort of be left up a tree last year, let's not croak. Let's seize this opportunity to move this bill hopping right along to the House and let them take it up.
Would an affirmative vote for this bill be the green button?
The correct button to push on this bill will be the green button, and we will go down in history as having a state amphibian.
Well, I'd make a frog joke, but I think Senator Smith used up the daily quota. Senate Bill 41, making the green tree frog the official state amphibian, passed 50-0 and goes to the House.
Well, in other news, the House Rules Committee today voted to send an abortion reform bill to the House floor, to the full floor of the House. House Bill 197 is also called the Woman's Right to Know Act. Jesse Freeman joins us live from the Capitol with more. Jesse.
When Wandy, House Bill 197 contains many of the abortion-limiting elements that other such bills contain, including a 24-hour waiting period and for an informed consent provision where women seeking abortions will hear information about the procedure. But House Bill 197 is the only abortion bill that will be debated on the floor of the House tomorrow. The House Rules Committee voted this morning to put House Bill 197 on tomorrow's House floor calendar.
House Bill 197. Move. Any objection? It's on.
The bill includes many anti-abortion measures and is sponsored by Representative Sue Burmeister.
It also puts in a what we call the woman's right to know, informed consent piece, where a woman is given all the information available to her in talking and consulting with the doctor. So she has full information on what's to happen to her.
Now, many House Democrats are opposed to the bill. They say it limits a woman's constitutional right to an abortion. Representatives Pam Stevenson and Mabel Thomas voted against the bill in the House Health and Human Services Committee.
They're coming in trying to basically really end abortion in Georgia, but it's like a backdoor approach to doing it. What it really does is creates a barrier for women to actually get these particular services.
I think the public policy of barriers is a decrease in accessibility of what in our country is a constitutional right to privacy. I believe that the barriers go through to the very core of that attack.
And Rules Chairman Earl Earhart says he wants to limit tomorrow's calendar because of the ceremonies for Governor Vandiver, who passed away Monday evening. House Bill 197 is one of only 3 bills that will be on the calendar for tomorrow. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thank you very much, Jesse.
And as you just heard, former Georgia Governor Ernest Vandiver passed away last night at the age of 86. Today, Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor said Governor Vandiver was an honorable man and a man of the people.
Governor Vandiver served in this chamber as our Lieutenant Governor between 1954 and 1958, served as Governor from 1958 to 1962, served as Adjutant General of the Georgia Guard during the Korean conflict and during a time when the Cold War was at its peak. A great, great Georgian. I hope that many of you got to meet him. He was truly a man of the people. Paupers and kings were no different to Ernie Vandiver.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll also add that Governor Vandiver guided our state through the desegregation of the University of Georgia and Atlanta Public Schools and reformed state government through more efficient business practices and really did help restore faith and trust in state government at an important time in Georgia's history.
Dear Lord, we want to thank you for your servant, Ernie Vandiver, who served for so many years with distinction in the halls of state government. We ask you to be with his family in this awful time of their loss. We ask you to honor this man and in appreciation for his selfless service, for his courage at a time when so many called for the wrong course of action. Your servant Ernie, he stood for the right course of action, and our state is better for it. Please welcome him into the gates of heaven. These things we ask in thy name. Amen.
Governor Vandiver's body will lie in state at the Capitol tomorrow from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. The public is invited to pay their respects.
Well, the House today voted to adopt principles for drawing new state congressional maps or undertaking future reapportionment issues. Representative Carolyn Hughley presented the minority report on behalf of the Democratic Party.
The question needs to be answered. What is the compelling state interest that we are responding to in moving in this direction now? I submit to you that if you are a true conservative, you will wait to perform this legislative task after the next census when we have accurate information, so that we will not create an unnecessary burden on our local election officials. We will not create confusion for our voters. We will not waste public resources for the partisan advantage of the majority.
After the House adjourned, Majority Leader Jerry Keene provided answers about why Republicans want to redraw voting lines this session.
Those of us that were here the last time we went through this saw that there didn't seem to be any principle in place, but we're in charge and now we're going to draw the maps the way we want them. And we said then, and we still say now, that this body ought to have some principles that guide us when we go through that process. Any redistricting process is somewhat partisan, we know that. But at the same time, there ought to be some ways to look at making this process somewhat fair.
The House Reapportionment Committee is scheduled to review maps tomorrow afternoon, but Committee Chair Bobby Franklin says a vote will not be taken.
In other news, Senate Republicans are fast-tracking a bill to require companies like ChoicePoint to quickly notify consumers about potential identity theft. Senate Majority Leader Bill Stevens says SB 230 has 3 aims.
One, it will require notice be given if information is obtained from one of these information gatherers by fraud or or in some nefarious way. Secondly, it defines what that information is and what's covered. And then third, it prescribes how the notice shall be given to the consumer on a timely basis.
Now, ChoicePoint is an Alpharetta-based company that has a huge database of personal information on individuals. That information is sold and intended to be used for legitimate business purposes only. But last week, the company began to notify thousands of customers, many in Georgia, that a fraudulent company had obtained data that could be used to steal consumers' identity. Senate Bill 230 sponsor, Senator Bill Hamrick, says the case brings up some larger questions than consumer notification.
If companies are in the business of putting all this information in one place and having it readily available, there should be some high standard for who gets the information, and I think on the front end that's a way to protect it. Now, when these companies approach us, I'm sure they'll say they have a screening process, but we need to find out what that is.
On another issue, Majority Leader Stevens said he expects Governor Perdue's Faith and Family Initiative to pass, and soon.
I predict it will pass at some point, either this week or next week, but I don't know if it will be this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. There's no secret. It depends on whether the votes are there or not. I don't foresee adding any anti-voucher legislative language, but I do see it passing.
Senate Resolution 49, a proposed constitutional amendment, would allow the state to pay faith-based organizations to provide social services.
The House today agreed to make victim restitution a mandatory part of sentencing guidelines. Representative Rich Golick explained that this would aid in criminal rehabilitation and victim recovery. But Representative Tom Bordeaux said the measure penalizes the poor. First, Representative Golick.
Who is our top priority? Our top priority is the victim of crime. And the change that we've made on page 6 we think reflects that. And just as a side note to that, as revised, restitution may be ordered as part of a sentence of straight time, life imprisonment, life without parole, or even in death penalty cases.
You need to understand what you're voting on here. Now, this House is going to pass it. I'm going to vote for this bill, but you need to understand what you're really doing. Something like 85% of criminal defendants don't have 2 nickels to rub together. They are indigent. They are poor. That's why they have to have appointed lawyers to begin with. They don't have any money. They don't have any property. They don't have any houses or real estate to put all these liens we're talking about against.
Representative Bordeaux did not, in fact, vote for House Bill 50. The measure passed by a vote of 143 to 29 and now moves to the Senate. The House also agreed to create 2 levels of care for assisted living facilities. Representative Lynn Walker said he's worked for 8 years to bring House Bill 206 to fruition.
They are an activist generation. It has been said, and I believe with intuitive accuracy, that we are becoming a gerontocracy. That is, we are becoming more and more a society driven by the needs of those over 50 years old.
The House passed House Bill 206 by a vote of 141 to 22. It now moves to the Senate.
President Bush's Social Security reform proposal is a matter of concern and interest in the nation's capital, as well as the state capital. Resolutions have been drafted in Georgia's House and Senate encouraging Georgia's congressional delegation to support the president's plan. This week, Senator Johnny Isakson hosted a town hall meeting at Georgia Public Broadcasting about Social Security reform. He addressed the reason why reform is needed now.
We have a crisis. As Andrew has said, the system in 2018 will be paying more money out to Social Security from the Treasury than it was taking in previously in payroll taxes. In fact, I'll tell you something interesting a lot of people don't know. Right now, the surplus every year of payroll taxes is a net deposit to the Treasury of the United States, and the Treasury of the United States writes an IOU to the Social Security Administration.
You can see the entire town hall meeting, a conversation with Johnny Isakson about Social Security, on his website at isakson.senate.gov.
Well, this afternoon, members of the Service Employees International Union marched down Washington Street to the Capitol front steps in a rally urging state legislators to increase employee wages and improve health care benefits. David Zelski has the story.
The state budget has increased. But many state employees believe it's not being managed appropriately.
We're in the greatest struggle of our lifetimes right now, and that's the struggle for the right to make a decent wage.
As it stands now, state employees will receive their next 2% raise in January.
In the nearly 7 years that I have been employed, I have only received a wage increase estimate of $700.
We would like to encourage the governor to consider a 3% pay increase as opposed to the 2%. We'd also like to see a sliding scale for state employees on the state health benefit plan so that wages and the premiums would be fair to the low-wage workers and high-wage workers.
The SEIU also wants state legislators to approve Governor Perdue's budget request for 500 new defects caseworkers and adopt permanent caseload standards to protect Georgia's children.
Today is the day we take back the taxpayer dollar and make sure that it's appropriated the right way. In a way that helps case managers effectively manage cases and keep children safe.
Employees like Rosalind Nixon say there's always been an unwritten compact between state employees and the state of Georgia, that even though the pay can't match that of the private sector, benefits would be better. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm David Zelski.
The Family Connection Partnership, a group of community leaders working to improve the lives of families across the state, met with legislators today during their annual meeting. Lawmakers' Chris Knight has more.
The Family Connection Partnership, or FCP, is a statewide network of 159 counties working to make better lives for Georgia's children and families.
That we track outcomes for children in 5 result areas: healthy births, children ready to go to school, children succeeding in school, and children living in safe and self-sufficient families.
The Department of Human Resources Commissioner B.J. Walker was keynote speaker at the FCP's annual meeting.
I'm looking for my future with and working with the Family Connection Partnership to really be about leveraging. How do we make sure that we're leveraging every public dollar in a responsible way with those people who are at the local community level?
The FCP is a public-private partnership, meaning it's partially funded by the state.
And without the support of legislators, the budget items could easily be cut.
But some top leaders under the Gold Dome offered some reassurance to the group that the General Assembly supports the efforts of this nonprofit organization.
Thank you for what you do every day for the families of this state in your communities. You all know from what you've been dealing with and from your communities have been dealing with, the cuts, $1.7 billion in cuts we had to make to our budget to keep it balanced. But in spite of that, we funded Family Connections fully and statewide.
When you're really partnering and when you're really collaborating as you do, you can make a dollar go a long, long way, and you do that.
Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Chris Knight.
Senator Sam Zamarripa has filed legislation that would put a moratorium on the death penalty in Georgia. The resolution calls for a temporary end to the punishment while a study commission is formed to explore what some call a biased process. Zamarripa drummed up support for his proposal today and was joined by advocates who are opposed to the death penalty.
We are here today with a coalition of human rights supporters and religious leaders to call for a halt on executions in Georgia and to ask the state to study the many problems with the application of the death penalty.
As a Christian, I seek to follow the wisdom and way of Jesus, the one who we believe to be a chosen child of God and who was a victim of a wrongful execution by the state.
This bill will ask us to review a couple of aspects of our current policy. Number one, do we meet the best evidentiary standards in the country? Do we have a policy that is of the best practice? Can the executioner of the state sign a document with 150% certainty that we have executed the right person for the right crime at the right time?
Senator Sam Zamarripa's legislation, Senate Resolution 184, awaits action in the Senate Judiciary Committee.
And in other news, the Georgia Rural Health Association presented its legislative agenda at the Capitol today. Lawmakers' Angela Vondrasek has more.
Healthcare professionals from around the state are encouraging the development of healthcare resources for residents of rural Georgia. Members say there are several legislative issues that may affect their progress.
Georgia is a state of great need. We have high rates of poverty, elderly, and uninsured citizens who live outside of Atlanta and the metropolitan areas.
There
several issues that rural health care providers need to address in their communities, and we're hoping that legislators and the public will be better informed about those issues and how we can help improve and strengthen health care in rural communities.
And the first issue that we're concerned about is the Medicaid managed care and the implications it will have in the rural areas, and in particular if they would look carefully after a year's worth of implementation. We know it's going to happen, but look after a year's worth of implementation on the effects it's had in rural populations.
The organization hopes that by addressing these issues, Georgia's rural health care will improve. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Angela Vondrasek.
Celebrating Future Farmers of America Week, students from across Georgia met at the Capitol today to honor those individuals who won awards at the National FFA Convention last October. Lawmakers' Michael Riddle has that story.
Over 100 FFA members gathered at the Capitol for breakfast this morning and were joined by legislators who praised their industry and their leadership.
Remember, there's only 5 things it takes to survive in this world. That's all. Everything else is a luxury. It's food, clothing, shelter, air, and water. 3 of them come from agriculture, and the other 2 are free. So when anybody talks about agriculture not being important to you, you just remind them of those 5 things.
Governor Perdue also discussed his support for agricultural education.
We are increasing the Governor's Honors Program in agri-science. Presently, the agri-science section of the program had slots for 15 students and 1 instructor. I'm proposing that we double that program to 30 students and 2 instructors to get more of you kids all across the state in that program.
Founded in 1928, FFA is the largest student-run organization in the world, with over 476,000 members. Georgia has 24,000 members, making it the 3rd largest association of FFA in the nation. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Michael Riddle.
Well, coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, the Senate is expected to take up the governor's education flexibility legislation, and the House is expected to debate the Woman's Right to Know bill, which deals with abortion access. We'll have those stories and all the latest from Under the Gold Dome. That's tomorrow at 7 p.m. If you missed any part of this broadcast, tune in when Lawmakers is rebroadcast tomorrow morning at 5:30 a.m. on GPB. Just a reminder for those of you with access to the Internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Lawmakers is streamed live and then archived on our website every night that we're on the air. And if you missed it this weekend, be sure to tune in tomorrow when Joseph Lowry, A Conversation, airs on Georgia Public Broadcasting. That's tomorrow at 7:30 following Lawmakers. Now stay tuned for Tsunami Relief Georgia Responds, hosted by Dr. Sanjay Gupta of CNN. The program features Ambassador Andrew Young, Dr. Julie Gerberding of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and Peter Bell, CEO of CARE International. That program's coming up next right here on Georgia Public Broadcasting.
And that is our broadcast for this, the 22nd legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Gerald Bryant.
And I'm Wendy Lawson. For all of us here at Lawmakers, good night.